Hey folks, Mike Johnson here. If it's got wheels and an engine, you're in the right place. On this channel, we dive into car repairs, maintenance tips, and everything you need to keep your ride running smooth. If you're into cars and want to keep learning, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. All right, enough talking. Let's get into it.
If your oil pressure gauge doesn't read correctly, but you don't hear any abnormal engine noises, you may have a faulty oil pressure sensor. Since it's important to monitor your engine's oil pressure, you'll want to diagnose and repair the problem immediately. The good news is that as long as you can easily access the oil pressure sensor, it's fairly simple to test and change. An oil pressure sensor, or oil pressure transmitter, is a pressure sensor that measures oil pressure. How to test an oil pressure sensor or switch. There are two main types of oil pressure monitoring devices: oil pressure sensors and oil pressure switches. An oil pressure transducer, also known as an oil pressure transmitter, is a pressure sensor that measures oil pressure. The sensor's internal resistance changes in response to fluctuations in oil pressure. Meanwhile, an oil pressure switch is just that, a switch that closes when oil pressure falls below a certain threshold. Before changing an oil pressure sensor or switch, you'll want to troubleshoot. You want to confirm that the part is faulty, while also checking that the engine is not suffering from low oil pressure. Follow the troubleshooting steps below to get the job done. Perform a preliminary inspection. If the instruments on your dashboard indicate low oil pressure, the first thing to do is check the engine oil level. A low oil level can lead to a lack of oil pressure and costly engine damage. Next, you'll want to carry out a visual inspection of the oil pressure sensor or switch. Look for problems, such as damaged wires and poor connections. If everything looks okay, you can move on to checking the engine oil pressure with a mechanical dipstick. A low oil level can lead to a lack of oil pressure and costly engine damage. Check engine oil pressure with a dipstick. The next thing you'll want to do is check engine oil pressure with a mechanical dipstick. This will eliminate a low oil pressure condition inside the engine. Before connecting the dipstick, you must first remove the oil pressure sensor, or switch. To get an idea of how to remove the sensor, read the corresponding section towards the bottom of this article. Once the sensor has been removed, you can install the dipstick adapter in the engine. Then connect the gauge to the adapter. Start the engine and note the reading on the gauge. If the dipstick indicates normal oil pressure, the problem lies with the oil pressure sensor, its circuit, or the dashboard instrumentation. Since oil pressure sensors are relatively inexpensive, most people choose to change the sensor at this stage. If the replacement part doesn't solve the problem, consult a repair manual or repair database for information on troubleshooting the rest of the circuit. How to change an oil pressure sensor. In most cases, replacing an oil pressure sensor or switch is a fairly straightforward affair. But the process will vary according to the year, make and model of the vehicle. On some cars, you may have to remove additional components to gain access to the sensor. So it's a good idea to consult the replacement instructions for your application in a repair manual or repair database. But for a general overview of what's typically involved in replacing an oil pressure sensor, see the information below. Before replacing an oil pressure sensor, first check that the part is faulty, while also checking that the engine is not suffering from low oil pressure. Tools and equipment needed to change an oil pressure sensor. The tools required to replace an oil pressure sensor vary according to the type of car you own. In general, however, you'll need jack and jackstands, oil pressure sensor socket, recommended, ratchet and socket set repair manual. Or access to repair database, safety goggles, torque wrench, wheel chocks, oil pressure sensor replacement instructions. Now let's start. Replacing your oil pressure sensor. The following steps will give you an idea of what the job generally involves. Note, the following are general guidelines for educational and entertainment purposes only. Consult your vehicle's factory information for specific repair instructions and recommended safety procedures. Oil pressure sensor removal, put on your safety glasses. Disconnect negative battery cable. Lift and support the vehicle safely using a jack and jackstands. Apply the parking brake and chock the rear wheels. Disconnect the electrical connector from the oil pressure sensor. Use a ratchet and an oil pressure sensor socket to loosen the sensor. In some cases, you may be able to use an ordinary socket or wrench instead of the dedicated sensor socket. Remove the oil pressure sensor from the vehicle. If your oil pressure gauge doesn't read correctly, but you don't hear any abnormal engine noises, you may have a faulty oil pressure sensor. Install the oil pressure sensor, and compare the new oil pressure sensor with the old oil pressure sensor to make sure both are of the same design. Coat the threads of the oil pressure sensor with sealant. If the new sensor is not supplied with pre-applied sealant, install the new oil pressure sensor in the engine. Use a torque wrench to tighten the sensor to the manufacturer's specifications. Reconnect the oil pressure sensor's electrical connector. Safely remove the stanchions and lower the vehicle. Reconnect the negative battery cable. To find a high-quality oil pressure sensor for your vehicle, consult our wide range of replacement products. In conclusion, changing an oil pressure sensor is a straightforward process that can save you both time and money. By following the steps outlined in this video, you can ensure that your vehicle runs smoothly and efficiently. Remember to always consult your vehicle's manual for specific instructions and safety precautions. Regular maintenance is key to keeping your engine in top condition, so don't hesitate to tackle this task when needed. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more helpful automotive tips.